All right. Good morning. We are learning Yerushalmi Brachas Perek Vav, Halacha Beis Gimel and Daled. In the Ois V'Hadar edition, we're going to be learning Daf Samachei. We left off on Daf Samach Daled Amid Beis, 5 lines before the bottom, right by the dot. Rav Yehuda B'Shem Abba Bar Chana, by the story. And let's quickly repeat the final intro we gave yesterday. That's where we're up to right now. And that is that when a person has various food types in front of him, in other words, foods that have different brachas for each one. So there are several factors that will affect precedence. And there'll be times where one factor will go against the other factor. Then you're going to have to pick from these factors, from these rules, which one will trump the other. First of all, there's a general rule that we avoid making a superfluous blessing. So if there's an option of only making one bracha, which will cover everything, or eating it in a different seder, and then you'll have to make more than one bracha, you make them one bracha. Another rule, if you have various food types and you prefer one more than the other, the words that we will use for that is that it's chaviv for you, that food. That, again, that's another rule that will take precedence over the other. There'll be another rule that whenever you have a bracha that's more generic, like shahakol, and another food type that has a bracha hadama. I know hadama is not only for one vegetable, but it's for vegetables. It's not for fruits. It's not for mezainis. And as we learned that shahakol b'diavad might be good for everything. The bracha that's more specific takes precedence over a bracha that's more generic. Okay? Now, having said that, we're going to start today by learning a great story. And we're going to explain the story in a way where we'll understand what the struggle was in b'diuk with having these conflicting values when you have to choose one rule over the other. We're going to go on to learning the new Mishnah, Halacha Gimel, and that will be the Mishnah that will discuss upon which foods does one need to make as shahakol. We're going to have the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda that holds that kol shehu min klala ein mevarchen olav, as we'll explain. And then we're going to go on to Halacha Dalet, to the final Mishnah on Daf Samach Amid Beis, where the Mishnah is speaking about the case that we'll start today's shir in the Gemara, that hoya lefanav minim harbe. And you have to know what bracha to make first. And that is going to lead us into a machlokes, and that's probably what we'll get up to, which is that when people eat foods prior to the meal in order to whet the appetite, prior to the meal means not that you washed hamoitzi and then you began to eat a vegetable. No, you're having certain foods, fruits, prior to washing hamoitzi. But you're having it not stam l'shem snack, in order to open up your appetite. There'll be a machlokes we'll have here in the Gemara, whether you have to make a bracha achroina prior to washing and having the meal, or since you ate it in order to whet your appetite, yes, you have to make a bracha lefanav. You got to make a ber priya eitz, having an apple. But we'll see. There's one opinion that says you don't need to make a bracha achroina, wash, and the benching will include that pre-meal food. And we'll see how that debate will be linked into the topic that we'll have in the Mishnah. Without any further ado, and let's go again to Daf Samach Dalid of it Beis, towards the end of the line, by the dot, Rav Yehuda. So here's the story. That Rav Yehuda, B'Shem Abba Bar Chana, relates the following. That Bar Kapara, the great Amoida Bar Kapara, Utrei Talmidoi, and 2 of his students that were traveling together, Ulaha'ir, that when a great person travels, yes, it's better for him to travel dafka with 2 people, right? For there always to be someone with him, even if one has to go to relieve themselves. And this Orchu ate some balabayas, and they were overnighting in a balabatisha home, right, who was zoicha to house them, Bahadein Pundika, Diverachta, in an inn in the city of Berachta, which is a beautiful hashgacha pratis, play of words. Berachta means brachas. And what happened over there was a question regarding our topic of brachas. What happened? Api kumeyoin, that the balabas, the waiter, brought out, that was the norm. You had an inn, they were run by Jews, and they had a dining room. So you know what's it called? Bread and breakfast. And they brought out, now guys, we have the same exact story in the Bavli. And the words that the Bavli uses to describe these foods are similar and not. So here we have pargan. I just want to say that in the Bavli, it's called pargiois, right? Similar. And that is a certain type of bird. Okay? A partridge. What bracha do you make for bird meat? Shahakol. And achvonaya. Now, achvonaya, in the Bavli, they call this durmaskin. And we're going to go dafka with the charedim that this achvonaya is a certain type of spinach. This is very important because what bracha do you make for spinach? Hadama. Just laha'ir that the Pnei Moshe, as he says, befedish on daf samachei yomad aleph, he understands that this achvonaya is a plum, and that will change everything because what bracha do you make for a plum? And that's going to change the whole story. It's very important. And the final food was in the Bavli, it's called kruv. In the Yerushalmi, it's kaf loitin, and that means cabbage, for which you make adam. You have to just appreciate that if you're going to learn the sugya, which we won't have enough time to go through the whole sugya again, lepnei Moshe. So the question was, David, shahakol, ha'etz, hadama. That's not what we're learning. The story was, it was a bird upon which you make shahakol, and hadama. Now you're going to ask, who cares about two hadamas? We'll see in a moment that there is something special about cabbage, about kruv, that's called here in the Yerushalmi kafloitin, that it gives a certain amount of nourishment more than other vegetables. It's amazing. And that will be another reason why perhaps it should take precedence by making a bracha over it. Okay, so here you have three foods. In the ideal world, who should be the one to determine, Chevra, what bracha should you make? Bar Kapara, the Rebbe, correct? There's nothing wrong with the Rebbe observing his Talmidim, struggling, explaining, maybe this should go first, maybe that should go first. You know, it's the initial conversation amongst the Talmidim is beautiful. I think that's the way a good teacher would be. He'll allow the students first to participate. Where the story went off is that after they went back and forth, instead of them turning to Bar Kapara to saying, Nu Rebbe, you heard our Svaras, educate us. They didn't do that, as we'll get in a moment. But let's first hear what were their life. So Amrei, they said to each other, guys, we're going on to Daf Samachei, Nevarech al Kaf Loita. Should we first make a bracha on the cabbage? Now, guys, we're going to keep our fingers in the charedim. We're going to learn this whole thing only in the charedim. Like we said, the Pnei Moshe has a whole different approach. And keep you one finger in the Gemara, one finger in the charedim. So if we'll make the bracha on the kaf leita, I'm sorry, we're not there yet, then do patar achvanaya v'loi patar pargisa. Well, this would exempt also the spinach, right? Because cabbage is adama, spinach is adama. So making one bracha over the cabbage will pater the spinach, but it would not pater the meat, right? The bird, the fowl, for which you have to make a shahakol. What was he trying to say with that? That's a point here. So look inside the charedim. Vikomash melon. There's a chiddush that the loy tema kiven the kruv zoyen, like we just explained. Kruv gives a certain amount of nourishment more than other vegetables. You might think that therefore it should be like kapas, like bread. And as we learned in the Bavli, and if we would think it's like bread, just like when a person makes a bracha over bread, what's the rule? Anything else that comes in that meal need not have its own bracha. It's covered by the bread. So one might have thought, make a bracha hadama over the kruv, and that not only will pater the spinach, the achvanaya, one might have thought it's going to pater also the meat, the fowl, because zoyin, because it's like bread. No, like the keichel. That's why the Talmud says no. That would not work. Now, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with making a hadama first and then a shahakal. And by the way, that's the halacha. Like we mentioned, one of the rules that we spoke in the intro is that when hadama is more limited, it's only for hadama. Shahakal is a more generic. There is a cloud that which bracha do we make last, the one that's more generic. So this seder, by the way, is not wrong, but the Talmud was trying to say something which is correct. Don't think that kruv, that cabbage, that kafloita in the Yerushalmi is like bread. It's not like bread. You would make a bracha on hadama, it would cover the other hadama type, it would not cover the shahak. Good statement. The next statement. Now, nevarech al achvanaya, what are we trying to do? We're trying to see if it's shaykh to make a bracha for one that would cover everything. Because if you can make a bracha for one that would cover everything, that was the first rule we said in our intro, you avoid making superfluous brachas. Problem is, it wouldn't work here. So, nevarech al achvanaya, should we make the bracha on the achvanaya? What's the achvanaya, guys? Let's go on the spinach. Then look at the next words. That's the worst. It would not exempt anything. Guys, you should jump. Why not? If you make a bracha on the mountain spinach, it should exempt the cabbage. Yeah, adama. So these words pasha don't work. So what we're going to do is, again, guys, there's so many ways of learning the Gemara. We're going to read the Charedim. The Charedim is going to emphasize for us to better appreciate how brief the Yerushalmi is. And they mamish, he made two statements. Navar al-Achmanai is one statement. You have to add something in. And then on the add-in, you're going to say, Leipater leidain v'leidain. Meaning, let's read, keep your finger in the Gemara, and go back in the Charedim. We're in the third line from the top. Navarach al-Achmanai yosam. If the bracha would be made on the mountain spinach, Leipater says the Charedim, Zeh lashon kosher ma'oid. The Eloi Shachar means there was no morning, there's no light. You can't make it work because he rejects the fact. If you make a bracha on spinach, yes, you covered for cabbage. It doesn't work. Number one. Number two, the Gamkash. What's the next line? That why didn't the Gemara speak out the next case? What would be the third option? Guys, there were three words. What would be the other option? For whatever reason, make the bracha on the meat. Why didn't the Gemara speak out that case? That lo yamru dein imbarchu al pargiyos ipoiter eloi. Why didn't they even speak out what would have happened if they would have made a bracha of shahakal? And by the way, you maybe think there might be a svara that when you make a bracha of shahakal, what did we just learn yesterday? B'di'evet, shahakal is good for everything. Maybe shahakal would be the way to go. So why didn't the Gemara even say it? And therefore, v'nira, guys, we're inside the Charedim. Nah, the lashon katzeru kiminega Yerushalmi. So let me tell you what really happened. This is what the Gemara really wanted to say, not what the Gemara want. That's the way our Gemara says in brief end. So the first one we covered. And by the way, the reason why the Gemara mentioned the first havamim, the first logic, would be to make the bracha on the kafloita, because the kafloita is zoye. Just to say, it gives nourishment. Zon, yes. Now, the next thing is make the bracha on the achvana yasa, which is on the spinach. The din will be the same that what? See, clear. Yes, it would exempt the kruv. You would make one a bracha hadama on either one or the other. It would cover the other hadama, but the loy pargios. Now, by the way, what's the chiddush? Kamash malon. There is a chiddush here. At least what was one chiddush? One might have thought that if you make the bracha on spinach, when you have cabbage and spinach, we're going that cabbage is more chashuv. Cabbage gives you more nourishment. So one might have thought that since it's not as chashuv as cabbage, because it's not zon like cabbage, even though it's both hadama, maybe lo yifter hagarua es chashuv. One might have even thought that. And that is at least what this Talmud was saying correctly. That what delays it. We don't say that. What do we say? Devadai. If you make a bracha on, in our case, on spinach, when you know there's cabbage, even though cabbage is more chashuv, you made the bracha on the less chashuv, it will cover both. Kiven duhu lefanov, that's key. It has to be in front of you, which means the machaven law. You intend also to eat the cabbage. The came with Sasi Lerashba, the common beprikin, Shakasa, that Alpha Pisha Ben Chosein Shavais, Ain't a bidin sheifted, Misha Eno Chashuv Esach Chashuv, Derech Gerara. So now we are learning, by the way, a rule that if I have two vegetables in front of me, and however you define it, one is chashuv and one is not. Not. When I made the bracha on the not chashuv, I didn't know there is the chashuv. I didn't know about that food. Even though it shares the same bracha, it will not be covered. Gerara means when it's dragging along, to drag it along. Yes, it's not automatic. That's not true. So we're learning over here. That here we're saying that if it's equal in chashivos, even though you didn't know about it, it will cover it. The exception will be, Rabbi Blauner, if I'm a guest in your house, it's different. If I'm a guest in your house and there's something that's not on the table, it's almost like, since I'm not the balabas, if I'm normal, some crazy people, when they're in your house, they feel like they're the balabas. But if I'm not the balabas, then as far as I'm concerned, there is no other food coming out. That's different. That's what you're referring to. Here we're speaking about a case, chashuv, not chashuv. So if you didn't know, it won't cover. But and therefore, okay, we got it. Go down into the second wine, the second of the medium-sized line. So that's that. Nevarach alach vanayasa adds the charedim. There's a whole megillah that the Gemara didn't spell out. So if you make the bracha on the cabbage, it would cover the cabbage and the spinach, not the bird. The Talmud says correct. If you make the bracha on the spinach, it will cover the cabbage, chiddush, because you knew the cabbage is there, even though the cabbage was even more chashuv, but it's not going to cover the shahak. Next case that the Gemara is in between the lines. We're reading straight in the Charedim. If the Talmud, if I'm going to make the bracha first on the pargiyos, on this portrait, on this bird, on this fowl, partridge, it will not exempt, not the cabbage, not the spinach, which he calls green. There's a chiddush, and that's the point he was making. That what? That the loy name don't say, since we just learned it yesterday, that al kulan im amar shahakol yatz. Shahakol b'di'evet covers everything. So hachinami yatza, you would think in such a case, what are we looking for? We're trying to see if there is an option of only making one bracha that will cover everything. And if that will be the way to go, then that's what you will do. It wouldn't work that way. Why not? Delays. Why? Here's the thing, Vlad. Here's the word. If I pick up a fruit, b'di'evet, and I made a shahakol, I should have made ha'etz. I picked up a vegetable, I should have made a hadam. I made a shahakol. I made it wrong, but I made it on this that I'm eating. That's where the Mishnah says, since you made it, you're yoitz. Here, you didn't pick up the vegetable. Here, you picked up the fowl. We'll call this the chicken. You picked up the chicken. You made a shahakol on the chicken. You can't say that now, b'di'evet, it's good for everything. No, it's not.
What if you have them in mind?
Let's read it inside. When you made shahakol on something which demands a shahakol, and even if you had kavanah, but I made it on something that shahakol. Or, in other words, if you have in front of you a hadama and ha'etz, you have to make it separately. And let's leave it at that. So that's at least what was the point? The point is, if there would have been a way of making one bracha for all, that's the first rule. If there's many foods, if one will cover all, make the one to cover all. There is no option over here. The option is either making hadama, and it's going to cover the other hadama, either direction, but not the shahakol, or you're going to make the shahakol, and then it's going to cover only the shahakol and not the hadama. Back to the kasha. Now each one, so you have kruv is zoyin, shahakol is generic. We're going to see the generic should go last, but there's another element of chaviv that we'll see in a moment. So they didn't know what to do. Now should have been the time where they turned to Bar Kapara and they say, Bar Kapara, Rebbe, enlighten us. They didn't do that. Two things went wrong. Number one is kafatz chad. One of them jumped. Ubeirach al pargisa. He made the bracha on the fowl. Shahakol niya b'dvari. Why did he do that? Why did he do that? We'll see. Very good, Vlad. Because chaviv, he was paskening. Look inside 3 lines in the biggest lines, in the widest lines. Because the Sabbath, he thought that chaviv adif. means there's a chiddush here, blood. There's another rule. The other rule is that the more generic bracha you leave for last. Normally, shahakol is left for last. The other rule is chaviv comes first. So he on his own paskin that the chaviv adif af al pi shahakruvu hamazay. What gives most nourishment is cabbage. All of the people today that they go to a restaurant, they order vegetables. You see, we're saying that a vegetable is more is giving you more sustenance than a chicken. Okay, a minute. So that's what he did. So and the moment that happened, his fellow laughed at him. His fellow laughing at him means, again, he didn't look to Bar Kapara to see, now that he did it, was that right or wrong? He himself is telling him, what you did is wrong. Also a chutzpah, which neither of them gave covet to their Rebbe. Which one gave a greater dishonor to the Rebbe? The second one. Why? Because the first one, he took a kofatz, he was hungry. So at least we understand, there's a type of eating. He couldn't wait for the Rebbe to give him upside down. So that thing, Bar Kapara said that. He was angry at him second. But the guy, Bar Kapara is going to count up. But the second one, the one that was Gachech Lechavre, the guy that laughed at the first one, who are you to stick your nose in? I mean, it's bad enough that he couldn't contain this type of eating, but at least you have a human being, you want to eat. You should have looked at Bar Kapara to find out. So what happened was, Amalei Bar Kapara, Bar Kapara right away said to the second one, that Loyla zed gurgaron. I'm not angry at this gurgaron, at this gluten. I'm not angry as much as he was also angry. Why? Because he's a gluten, because he needed to eat. Elalach, luglugan, but to you the mocker, you the laugher, that ze asa kegar giram nusai. That one acted like we explained because I know. But atolama liglakta, it's disrespectful to me. And then he wasn't done with the first. And then he turned to the first, Amar, that even if you think that I'm not the bigger chacham than you, so you paskin on your own, you decided that chaviv comes first, even though, like we said, kruv is zoyin, even though kruv is a more limited bracha, but at least I'm an elder. What zaken ain't kan. At least as a zaken, you should have consulted with me first. And Amru, they said that lo yatsa shenasan achamesu. None of them lived the whole year out. They both died. Even the first guy, upon whom Bar Kapara was angry less. Now the Gemara wants to know, okay, very nice. You have a tzaddik, you get him angry, bad consequences, but what is the halach?
All over a chicken? They died over one chicken? They both died because of a chicken? Are you kidding me?
Omar Rabbi Yosi. Oh, Omar Rabbi Yosi. Here's a chayin. Hozlin and today. He's saying, look how he's wording it. He's saying, 2 Jews passed away, and we still don't have the halacha. Like they died for nothing. But we didn't learn anything from them because we don't know whether they were right, whether they were wrong. So my kidding, meaning, what should someone do in such a case? Definitely honor Bar Kapara, but what bracha should you make? So the Gemara responds, that mevarech ala kaflut, you should make the bracha on the cabbage. Why? Because shahakol nihiya bidvarai is considered a tfela. It's considered subordinate to it. Meaning, guys, look inside the Charedim 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid. In the beginning of the line, it's the middle of Divrei HaMaschal Mestabrim Mevarach Ala Kaflut Shahakol Tfelo Loi, says the Charedim, quoting the Rosh, Mishum, that's the rule that we said. Shahakol Eino Mivoreres Elokei Lalos. That's a key here. In other words, yes, Chaviv is a rule. He liked more the chicken, this partridge. But no, first of all, there's a klal that any bracha that's more generic, you leave for less. It's not mavurer, it's not specific. Hadama is more specific. Shahakol covers more. Hadama covers less. And on top of that we said already that cabbage is zon, which is why cabbage comes before spinach. But you'll have to make 2 brachas. Which one comes first? Hadama comes before shahakol. So we pass it. In the hadama itself, which one should come first If you have one that's chaviv for you, then you make it on the chaviv. If you like spinach, if it's both equal to you, then you make it on the one that gives you more nourishment. So that will be the right seder.
What if he looked at the bird and he had all three items in mind and made shakol for all of them?
That's exactly what Vlad pointed out. That's why we read the Chareid. That was the chiddush that we learned from the Talmud. That it would not have worked. It would not have worked. If he would have picked up the cabbage and made a shahako, then it would have worked. No one will tell you to do that because that's only b'di'evet. But when you make shahakol on something that demands a shahakol, it doesn't cover anything that should have its own bracha.
Got it.
So okay, now Vlad is saying something else. If a person did not have kavana, that's a whole different thing. That could be different. Okay, let's go weiter. Let's move weiter. Yes. Oh, Rice is yesterday or 2 days ago. David is going back. I want to go forward. He's going back.
You make it first. You make
on different foods. Yeah.
Now do you make them shahakol's own?
No. You make shahakal on something that's shahakal. No, you make a shahakal on that which is brachas shahakal. You don't know what to make it. No, you don't make a shahakal lechatchila if you don't know what the brach is. Okay, let's go back. Now, moving on to Mishnah Gimel. Guys, don't worry. We'll have time to squeeze it all in. Says the Mishnah, we spoke in the beginning of the Perek. We didn't mention shahakal yet in the Mishnah. So says the Mishnah, that's the rule. Al davar she'ein gidul of min haaretz, meat, eggs, cheese doesn't grow from the ground. On that you say shahakol nihiyah bidvaroi. Now chaymetz is wine that went off, came vinegary. Goivai is locust, kosher locust. Noivlois are fruits that were blown off their tree prior to them becoming mature. Machlekes. Tanakama says also shahakol nehemad. Okay, makes sense. Wine is wine when it's wine. If it's not chashuv, went off, you're not going to make a bari priya. You're not going to make a bari priya eitz because it went off. So you make a shahakol. Goivai is like a meat, doesn't grow from the ground. And noivlois here, even though noivlois should have been ha'etz, but that's when the fruits are good. These fruits are not good. They went down a notch, goes down a notch shahakol. But so the Tanakama, Yehuda Omer, kol shuhu min klala, any type of food which is a result of a curse meaning wine going off is not good. Locusts are delicious, but locusts bring a curse. Locusts, they eat everything up. They're machir of the world. And the noivlois is a curse because the fruit did not have time to mature. That's called min klala. Says Rabbi Yehuda, ein mevarchen olav. Now, what does ein mevarch of olav mean? The pshat means you eat it without making a bracha. Says Rav Baruch Tam, that's not what it means. You may not eat anything without making a bracha prior. What it means is that if you want to eat any one of these three, he agrees with the Tanakama that theoretically it should have been a shahakol, but you can't make a bracha on it. So what should you do? Take any other food, shahakol, make a bracha on that, and then eat this. That is what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, and not eat it without making a bracha. So learns Rav Baruch Tam. Guys, let's move. Says the Gemara. Guys, we have enough time. So first of all, the Gemara quotes a brayso, and we're adding the word. We are going with the girsa that we add the word tanei, which is important. So says the brayso, and this is going to be a raya, like the Tanakama, not like Rabbi Yehuda, that even for something that is min klala, yes, you could make a bracha on it. Now that brayso is adding another din, and that is a din that we're going to learn in the 9th chapter of this Masech, which is when a person hears bad news or news that we perceive to be bad, we make a baruch daino emes. So if one's wine turns vinegar, you say baruch daino emes. But it's not a contradiction to the fact that if you now want to go and eat this chaymitz, you make a shakal with clearly, like I mentioned. Similarly, say both. Mach zwei brachas. When you see the locust, goiva doesn't mean one little grasshopper. It means a whole chevre, and they're eating up someone's produce. Baruch daino emes. Mitashem malchus, of course. Bala achlan. When you see fruits that are being blown up the tree prior to their maturity, you say Baruch Taino Emes. But Bala Achlan, you do say Baruch, etc. Shahakol Nihiya Vidvarai Olaraya Teratanakama, not like Rabbi Yehuda. And now let's move on. Let's move on now to today's final Mishnah, to Allah Dalit. And now we're going here, Chevre, to the same topic we began in the Gemara with the story. Chevre Halkop. Says the Mishnah, there's going to be a machlokes within a machlokes, and we're going to make a puzzle. Says the Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah is not saying what minam harbe. At least on the story, we had specifics. No, we had a machlokes between the Charedim and the Pnei Moshe, what they are, but let's go minam harbe. So says the Gemara, says the Mishnah. Rule number one, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im yesh b'neiam mimin shiva. The way we will learn this, Chevre, is that you have in front of you two foods that both demand ha'etz. That's the way we're learning the Mishnah. You have an apple and a grape. The question is, over which one do you make a bracha? On that says Rabbi Yehuda, since a grape is one of the Shivas Aminim, and the apple is not from the Shivas Aminim, even though they berchasan by the priya eitz, Allah who mivarech, and we're going to keep on speaking about this example of the apple and the grape, just not to get confused. Look inside. One second. Let's finish the bit, then we'll read the Charedim. No. What does it mean? Not whichever one you want, Hefker belt. No. Chaviv. We said this already yesterday, 2 days ago. That if you have a preference, meaning you like apples more than grapes, the rule of Chaviv trumps the rule of Shivas Aminim. Look inside the top Charedim. Huh? Perish im echad mahaminim. For you. Now there's another nuance which is important. When we speak about Chaviv, let's dive into Chaviv for a moment. There is what you want this second, and what Bechlal do you like more? And Chaviv is not determined what you want this second. It's determined of what's generally more Chaviv to you. The Charedim writes at the Fetish that im echad mahaminim Chaviv tadir olav yoiser. Chaviv tadir olav yoiser. Afilu roitza ato lechol min achar tchila. Now you want the grape, but generally you're an apple guy. Mevarech ala Chaviv. And of course, you make a bracha, you have to eat a little bit of it, and then eat whatever you want to eat right now. That's another nuance in the Chaviv. Why? Because it says the Charedim, that's the whole machlokes here. Because the Chaviv l'Rabbanan is k'moi min shiva l'Rabbi Yehuda. Now, guys, k'moi min shiva, it makes him level. Yeah, but l'kula alma, when it's leveled, what bracha do you make on that which is Chaviv? Not so simple, this, because we just said that you don't want this right now. You right now want the grape. So it's not leveled. Okay, we'll leave it over here. Now again, when we spoke out the apple and the grape, so that we took it from the Charedim writes clearly that you should know. Let's finish the Charedim. That you should know that the loy nechluku, our Mishnah is only speaking about a scenario where sheberchaysei and shavais, like an esrog and a zayis. Like you have a tzunoin, a radish and a zayis. No, you would think it's crazy. Huh? But not because of that. The kula alma chaviv adiv. Wow. Yeah. Even if they're radish. Yeah. Wow. So very important. In other words, our Mishnah is speaking about B'chasem Shabbos. Now let's begin. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to have a machlokes amoyroyim, and we're going to show you how this machlokes is very much connected to our Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omar. Guys, halkop chevre. That I want you to know that ma pligin Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan, meaning, where is their argument? In what case is their argument? And let's repeat what we spoke about in the intro. That's going to be a very big topic. Chevra, there are times that people eat something prior to the meal in order to whet their appetite. And no, malafin es apas, there's two words that are very similar. Malafin apas means is that even when they ate steak, everything was eaten with bread. But then there was something that you eat prior. Yeah, I think that's the word. Prior, it's very similar to the meal, to whet your appetite. And here's the question. Do you make a bracha achrayna prior to washing? A bracha reshayna, for sure you make. Maybe you don't have to make a bracha achrayna. Why? Because since you're eating it for the meal, you wash and eat. And then when you make birchas hamazon, the birchas hamazon will cover that, just like the rule is that when you have something between washing and benching, but it's not part of the meal, like lamashal dessert, you make a bracha reshayna. I'm going to make a mezainis for a poison cake with the sugar, but you don't have to make a bracha achrayna. It's included in birchas hamazon. So that's a machlokes, and that's going to be very significant. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds that our Mishnah is only kishahoya bedati lechol pas. In other words, the foods, let's go back to our apple and grape, is prior to eating a meal upon which you will not be making the bracha after, regardless. Only question is, from these two, in the bracha reshayna, which you will only be making a bracha reshayna, there you have a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Avol ein bedati lechol pas. If all you're eating is the snack, which means you will not only have to make a bracha reshayna, you will also be making a bracha achrayna. Let's go back to our case. What bracha achrayna is made over here? Apple and grape. For the apple, you only have to make a bracha nefashos. For the grape, you have to make a bracha me'ein zayin. So for the bracha achrayna, which one is more chashuv? The grape. Kol alma moide, right? In the Babli, we kula alma moide, that she'im yesh b'reim emim shiva, olav hu mevarech. And the Chachamim will not say al ezamehem sheyirtzem. In other words, let's look inside the Pnei Moshe, around 8 lines before the first widest line, the last medium line going into the first widest line. The Min Shiva Shalav Mavarich says the Pnei Moshe that the Kiv and should tzarich levarach achreihem, since you have to make a bracha achrayna. And by the way, here also there's a big machlokes Pnei Moshe and Charedim. We're going to learn dafka the way the Pnei Moshe learns it. Umin shiva adiv. Why is min shiva adiv for bracha achrayna? Because the ton bracha mein gimel. So then mevarech gam kein lofan of Allah v'lo yal min achad l'kulal. Okay, clear. So says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now we're going to have Rabbi Abba that's going to argue with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. But the reason he's going to argue with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he's not going to limit the case of our Mishnah, is because he argues in this principle itself. Rabbi Abba doesn't hold like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who holds that anything that's eaten prior to a meal in order to whet your appetite does not demand a bracha achrayna. Rabbi Abba argues with that. He says, Miman afshar, if it will be included in the meal, in other words, if you don't have to make a bracha achrayna, why would you have to make a bracha reshayna? Let's read it inside. Amar Rabbi Abba, no, that's sarich levarach basoif. Even when you're eating something only to whet your appetite. Ubemela, what is he trying to say with that? So therefore, the machlokes of our Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is regardless. Makes no difference. The Chachamim will hold that, like we gave our example. You like the apple. The apple is for you, generally chaviv olav yosef. You will make the bracha on the apple, even though the grape demands a bracha me'en gimel. Now the Gemara explains. Get all of this. L'pnei Moshe. Amar Rabbi Yossi. I want you to know that Hada, the Rebbe Ba, who's Rebbe Ba? They skipped the Aleph a lot. Rebbe Ba is this Rab Abba. This Rab Abba. This Rab Abba, what's Pshat? Pliga al Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi. In other words, he's arguing in the rule itself. Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi, Amar. He's talking about what we said before by heart. That Ma Pliga Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan only b'shoya b'dati lechol pas. In other words, since anyways there will not be a bracha achrayna, that's why it's shayach for you to have a machlokes. Abel ein b'dati lechol pas. He's quoting the words. This is all the words of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So kol amamoy did that what? That she'im yesh b'neim min shiva. Even though you like apples, for apples for you, Kaloshan hacharedim is chaviv tadir olav yosef. No, you'll make the bracha on the grape. Olav mevarich. However, now guys, v'mar means v'amar. Amar Rabbi Abba, you got it? V'ma Rabbi Ba, no, v'tzarech levarach basoy. Why? Look inside Daf Samach Vav. Because loy beirach. Because if you're going to agree with Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that's the way the Bnei Moshe teaches. If you're going to learn with Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that you don't have to make a bracha at the end. Why is that? Because you are considering it part of the meal. So now I have a kasha. If it's part of the meal, then it's tuffle to the meal. That's why it's included. So why would you have to make a bracha rishayna? So then it should become a tefillah. This pre-meal food, this appetizer, should be a tuffle, should be subservient. And will we not learn, which we will, that kol shahu iker v'imay tefillah, whenever you have food, and the foods are two different categories, but one is considered, however you get there, as the iker food, as the primary food. One is only considered tuffle to it, secondary to it. The rule is bevarach halu iker upaiter asat tefillah. So if you, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, are not arguing, no, they argue when you're eating it before a meal, then there's nothing to argue about, because then there wouldn't be a bracha rishayna at all. At all. Bracha rishayna, there's going to be a bracha achrayna. Muzman Zagen, that even when you're not eating it before a meal, he argues with Rabbi Shua ben Levi. There's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda holds, we're speaking like we learned in the Charedim, that he quoted from the Rishonim, we're speaking about the same food type. Ha'etz. The rule will be, Rabbi Yehuda says, if one of them is Meshivas Haminim, that trumps, and the Chachamim say, Chaviv will trump the Shivas Haminim. We'll stop over here.
Sorry, is one of them saying that you don't say a bracha at all, and it's covered?
One of them is saying, no. He's not saying that. He's proving, Rabbi Abba is proving to Rabbi Shua ben Levi that it can be that anything that's eaten before washing will be included in benching. Because if that would be the case, then you would not have to make a bracha rishayna, and there's no such a thing. We learned from Rav Baruch Tam, even in the previous Mishnah, Kol Shuhum Min Klala Eim Varchan Olav doesn't mean what it sounds like it means. I want to add something that what do we do? What do we do, Nu Chevre? It's on the second night of Rosh Hashanah. What we do is second night Rosh Hashanah. Second night Rosh Hashanah is where we make the new fruit prior to washing, because you're making it for the Shechiyanu. So if you have the shear, we make a bracha achrayna. Like Rababo, we make a bracha achrayna. We don't make an alagef, because the difference is that the kiddush that you're making is in order to eat. We are not allowed to eat without making kiddush. So when we drink wine before every night, Shabbos, night and day, you make a bracha rishayna. There is where you don't make a bracha achrayna. But if you're going to eat food, even though the food that we eat on the second night Rosh Hashanah is for the Shechiyanu, we make a bracha achrayna. It says in the law, if you eat the shear, you make a bracha achrayna, and then on the night of the Seder, why don't we have a shear of the onion, and not because you like eating onion? Because you make a shear, you'll have to make a bracha achrayna, right? You make a bracha achrayna, then you'll have to make another hadama for the marid. We don't make a hadama on the marid because we were yoyse with the karpas. But that's why we don't eat the shear. We go like Rabbi, we go with Rabbi.
All the Sephardim who make all these brachot, they need to say an after bracha before.
I don't know the Sephardim Pascha. I'm saying that I know by us. We follow Rabbi Abba, not Rabbi Shua.